It is an extreme honor today to be sitting here interviewing a legend in my mind. Seriously. And Chris, thank you so much for doing this, Dr. Chris Griffin. And we have another common friend, Stephanie Mohan from Iowa.
Yeah, Stephanie and I did a program together about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a lot of fun working with her. We did a couple of live events and put a product together, and went around and consulted with some folks. But interestingly, Howard, I think years ago I bought this product of yours called like the 30-day dental MBA. You remember that thing?
Did anybody ever get to day 30? Did you ever hear?
I did. Listen.
No, you did not.
I drove to Houston, Texas, and I listened to that thing all the way there and all the way back.
Oh my gosh! I'm sorry. I'm sorry you didn't get in a car wreck and were safe and put out of your misery. But
I remember a quote you had in there that you said that the reason you didn't do consulting was because like on day 2, you put a gun to their head and say, "You're an idiot. If you don't do this, I'm going to blow your head off," and they still wouldn't do it or something like that. Anyway, it turns out, Howard, you've got a lot of wisdom. Trying to get dentists to do things they don't want to do is hard to do.
Well, I never got into in-office consulting because dentists, when they give a consultant money, they want to be pampered, and they want to hear that they're great and they're wonderful, and that the reason their practice is bad is because of Obama and the economy, and everything is on. I call it the Saddam Hussein syndrome, where Saddam, if any of his management team told him anything he didn't want to hear, he just shot him. So everybody told him what he wanted to hear. So his information was so bad, he literally thought he could keep the Americans out, and the Americans took him out in 100 hours. And that's just bad information. And dentists do the same thing. I've noticed it in staff meetings where in staff meetings, the dentist does all the talking. And he just stands up there basically giving a lecture, she's giving a lecture, whatever, and then they pay a consultant $30,000, and the consultant comes, and the first thing every consultant does, and every one of them will tell you the same thing, they want to meet privately with each dental assistant, each hygienist, each receptionist, and the spouse if they work 1 hour a month or more in the office. They tell them everything that's wrong with the practice, and then the consultant basically goes and tells the dentist what's wrong, and the dentist thinks the consultant's a genius. And it's just a matter of not listening to your staff. And that's why I don't do in-office consulting, because when I would go and do in-office consulting, and the entire problem was always the dentist. It was in the leadership skills, the vision, the work, mutually exclusive goals, all these crazy things. And they don't want to hear any of that. They want to hear that everything is someone else's problem. And if they had a magic bullet, like if they signed up for this one marketing campaign or sent out a flyer, they'd get all these patients that just want $30,000 full mouth rehabs, and they'd be a cosmetic product. In this last recession in 2008, 86 practices went bankrupt in my town in Phoenix, and half of them were the cosmetic practices. And over the years, all they did is bleaching, bonding, and veneers. And they had no skill set to do a root canal, pull a tooth, do a partial, do a denture, place an implant. And I'd say, you can't pull a tooth? And they go, I don't like blood. I'm like, then why didn't you be an engineer? Why would you go into a doctor of a human body if you don't like blood? So dentists routinely don't want to hear, and then that's what I like about lecturing is I'm not there to be your friend. I'm not there to be your buddy. I'm not selling you anything on the back end, and here's what I absolutely believe. And people who have a hard time listening to it, I'd say, well, we all hate politicians because they're lying to you. But then when I tell you the truth and you don't like it, then you get mad at me, the messenger. And I said, I think it's a form of love that I'm honest, that I respect you enough, and that I love, trust, and respect you enough that I'm going to tell you exactly what I think, whether you like it or not. You know what I mean? And But hey, enough about me. You're an amazing man. You were the youngest to graduate to get the FAGD in your state.
At one time. I don't know about lately, but I got it back in the day when you had to be 5 years out of school. I got it at age 29.
I've never heard anybody get it at 29. That is amazing. And so I'm going to start the question with this. Here's how I like starting all the questions. Okay. This economy popped in 2008. And now it's 2014. Everybody said when it popped that we were going to lose a decade, just like the Depression. It was going to be a decade. Here we're 8 years into it, and there's 25,000 dentists to say my town's going nowhere, my local economy is not going up, it's not going down, everything's flat, everybody's maxed. My numbers for my practice every year for the last 5 years, same production, same collection, nothing's going on. We just had 5,000 kids graduate from dental school, averaging about $250,000 in debt. They're scared. What would you tell, what makes you excited about dentistry? What would you tell a dentist who's been flat for 5 years? What can they think about? What's growing? What's hot? What's not? What gets you excited about dentistry?
Well, I don't know about what's hot, what's not, but I'll tell you what's happened to me recently. What I can speak to my experience. I thought I knew everything getting out of school. I tried to do one of those fancy advanced service practices like you're talking about in Phoenix. I went to all institutes. Didn't work. About 2005, I tried to transition into more of a capacity or volume model practice, and I thought I had that figured out. And then let me show you a picture, Howard, and let me show you what May 21st of last year, things are rolling on real good, and I I get a call and I drive to my office, and this right here is what I saw coming down the hill to my office. Now that is a picture of my office burning to the ground.
What year was that?
That was last year, 2013, May 21st. Here's a picture of me watching it burn to the ground with my dad. And
who started the fire? Your girlfriend or your ex-wife?
Well, it was it was a lightning storm, believe it or not.
Sure.
I know. Sure. This is a good picture. Let me show you this. That's what my best operatory looked like the next day. And I'm on the front page of the paper. This is the advertising you want to see, right? Front page of the paper. Local dentist office burned down. So, things were going good. You're in a good place in life. Things are rolling smoothly, and your office burns down.
Hit by lightning.
Hit by lightning. It was the same thunderstorms that killed a bunch of people in Oklahoma with tornadoes. It came through Ripley, and the tornadoes weren't here, but the lightning got me. So anyway, we're still to this. By the way, if you think insurance just pays for everything, what do you think about it? Okay, so right, I had to find a way. I had to find a way to make things work. I'm 41. I got 3 kids. I can't just sit around. So I was actually I found a little nurse practitioner's office, I had 14 ops, Howard. I had 14 ops. Now, did I use all 14? I used like 4 or 5 for ortho checks and exams mostly, but I found a little nurse practitioner office. I converted into 6 ops, or really 5 ops, and went in there, and for 13 months I call it my year in exile. So I was forced to go from a great situation where I pretty much was out of debt, 14 ops, things are going smooth, to a terrible cramped situation, 7 of us sharing one bathroom. Some staff quit because they didn't like the conditions, and yet we were still able to find a way to shift our production system to where we still were able to keep our net where it needed to be. And now we're back. See behind me, there's nothing on the wall yet because we just moved into my new offices. So we're back, and I did learn a lot. I thought that I was very streamlined, and things we did were very productive. But when you're forced into that situation, you are really forced to get super streamlined, super efficient, super productive. Everything you do must count. There cannot be a wasted moment. I'm kind of known for just working 3 days a week. I was not willing to take an extra 4th or 5th day from my family. And so I had to make it work in that small situation. And so, that's what we did. Now, I believe, have probably studied. Now, see, you said something about being an engineer. I was an engineer. I went to Mississippi State University, and I was in petroleum engineering for a semester. My college roommate's now the CEO of a company worth $2.5 billion. So it's hard to say that I made the better decision, career choice between the two of us, but I'm happy where I'm at. But after that, I didn't like engineering. I love the math, I love the physics, but I hated the idea of sitting in an office. And, blood doesn't bother me. I like it. I grew up on a farm. So, hey, on a farm, if you don't like nasty stuff, you're in the wrong business. And so dentistry is a lot cleaner than farming, let me tell you, raising cattle and stuff. So, that was fine. But what I did do is in my dental practice, I've kind of taken a lot of my engineering background and I've tried to transition it into dentistry. So, I don't know. I don't know how much you want me to talk on this thing. I don't know, but I can keep going on this because I love this topic.
Keep going. It's all yours, baby.
Okay. Well, okay. So I'll tell you, so the fire happened, right? And I'm kind of down in the dumps, but we're making it work. About that time, I got a call from the Mississippi State University. I'll show you this. I had written this book. Now, this book is nothing special, but I took a lot of my philosophies on how to be more efficient, and I wrote this book called Time Genius. Somehow, the president of Mississippi State University got a hold of the book, and one day they say, hey, the president of Mississippi State wants to see you, and I'm drilling on a patient, and I'm like, what? I didn't think, I thought they meant like the local chapter guy, but anyway, I got through my root canal or whatever. I go to the break room, and there is, sure enough, the whole president of Mississippi State University, and he shakes my hand and says, hey, I read your book. I'm so proud that alumni like you can, have done things like this. I want to feature you in a spread in our alumni magazine. And along with that came an invitation to speak to the engineering college entrepreneurship program, which is something I bet you would like. It's not just engineering kids, but anyone who's really interested in entrepreneurship can be in this master's level program. So I get to go, and I actually got to speak. There's some collage. So I'm speaking on the stage, literally, Howard, where I took Psychology 101. I took Intro to Western Civ on this same stage, and I'm up there lecturing for an hour. It was the coolest thing in the world, and I'll never forget it. The name of the dean was it was Dean Martin. So Dean Martin invited me, took me around all day, and after I got through speaking, I'm going back to the car, and he's walking me back, and he said, Chris, he said, it's really amazing the way you took those lean management principles and applied them to dentistry. And I said, what do you mean lean management, Dean? And he said, have you not studied lean management? Everything you said is pretty much lean management. I said, I said, Dean, I really don't know what lean management is. But he said, well, Chris, let me tell you, I wondered why you were using such strange terminology, but everything that you said fit into all the lean management principles that we teach in our engineering schools. And so he said, you really need to go learn it. So I went to Amazon and I bought a bunch of books. Like if you go to Amazon right now, you can get a book basically on lean management, value streams for healthcare even. It's tons of info. But the bottom line is that years ago, some people say Benjamin Franklin invented lean management or waste stopping principles. Some people say Eli Whitney, but the truth of the matter is Henry Ford. Henry Ford took it to the next level. When he made a way to make a ton of cars fast, he created all these systems. And then something very interesting happened. I got all these props, Howard. I got to use them. So World War II happens, right? So in Japan, we got World War II happens. My grandpa and a lot of other people go over to Japan on ships like this, and they were really good, right, at conquering Japan. But in the process of conquering Japan, they destroyed the infrastructure. And so it was so bad that General MacArthur called back to the States, and he's like, look, I can't get this country reorganized if we don't have better infrastructure. I need somebody over here to help these people get Japan back to at least where we can start building it back. So the United States came over, and my grandpa was still there, I guess, because I've got these in my possession. You ever seen this right here, Howard?
Wow. I have not ever seen that.
I've got a bunch of Japanese currency that's in English. Give me a break. So I guess the Americans were over there rebuilding, and we had English money in Japan. But anyway, a guy named Edward Deming gets over there, and you know all about him, I know, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so he comes over and he's known for statistics, which I love statistics. I mean, if you saw the walls in my office that burned down, I had a room that was covered in statistics. But he gets over there and he transitions not only from statistics, but he gets them to learning all these other management principles. And the Japanese take to that like nobody's business, and they just they take all these lean principles that Henry Ford develops, Deming brings in, and they just take them to the nth degree, man. The guy that one of his pupils was the guy that started Sony. All of his influences influenced Toyota. I mean, basically every company that's big from over there, had this influence. And so I really got interested in studying it. And as we studied it, it helped us not only with our practice to stop all the blockades, or as the Japanese would say, the neku, right? But also any offices that we work with and help try to get more efficient and leaner. And so we've just taken it from there. So that's where that's my background, and that's what we love doing, is just streamlining stuff, making it more efficient, helping our practice, and then also we do work with some other practices, even though, like you say, nobody really wants to hear the truth.
So looking at just the average dental office, what is the low-hanging fruit of how they could be more lean, adopting lean management for your average dentist in America?
Well, here's one thing I like to do. So let's say we have a dentist and his staff here. Now, I don't travel all over the country. I bring them in here because this is where I'm comfortable. So we'll sit down at a big table, and I like to say, okay, we're going to start with a process map, and we're going to start with assuming that you don't have a patient. There's a pool of patients out here. There's got to be some mechanism for you to get a person interested out of the pool of patients. Then that person has to have a mechanism to be attracted to your office, to contact your office. Once they've contacted your office, there's a process. I want to see everything that patient sees from the moment they drive to your office, pull up in the parking lot, walk in the front door, talk to the person at the front desk, how they're treated, everything that happens to them, how they're received by the assistant, how they're taken to the back, how they're talked to for the first consult, what happens with x-rays, what happens after with a diagnosis, how do you present the financials, how do you present the case acceptance. Once that's done, how quickly can you transition into dentistry? A lot of low-hanging fruit, honestly. People leave same-day dentistry on the table every single day in every practice, and it's almost always just because it's not because the clinical dentistry skills are slow. It's almost always because they just don't have the proper systems to make it happen fast enough. We want to know what happens to the patient as they walk out the door, behind the scenes, financial arrangements like getting the insurance information, figuring out exactly how the insurance, the flow back there goes. I mean, there's so many parts to it, and what will happen, Howard, is we'll start out, and it's not long into the process before we start getting the dental team to start talking, and the dental team knows everything that goes on, right? The dentist acts like they probably just heard it for the first time sitting there, but they knew it. They just didn't want to let themselves believe some of these problems they were having. And so before you know it, man, you got, I don't know, a page full of action plans, and hopefully by the end of the day, they've got 15, 20, 30 action plans with actionable processes and deadlines and people responsible and ways to monitor. Because another thing, Howard, that I've noticed, you go to a seminar, or you do a consulting day, or you do a consulting, whatever. You have these great ideas and things to do. You may even have enough sense to set a plan and set a deadline and set a person responsible. But then a lot of dentists just sort of fall down on monitoring that. So they'll say, well, okay, that's done. I'm going to go back to drilling for 8 hours a day and going to the house and playing golf, and that's fine. But then 6 months later, you didn't have a way of effectively monitoring and seeing if the stuff actually got done. And so I think that the biggest low-hanging fruit for anybody is just your flow in your office. If it were more efficient, it would allow you to do more dentistry. And also another not quite so low-hanging fruit, because it involves some interaction with team members, communication. I mean, I don't know what your experience is, but my experience is that most offices have a tough time talking to the doctor and talking to each other. the front office, back office may have some friction, but people generally just don't communicate well with each other. And if you can help that, it's a tough one, but if you can help that, I mean, it just makes everything better.
So back to staff communication. Does your office start with the morning huddle? Does your office staff wear walkie-talkies? How often do you have staff meetings? Talk about staff communication.
Okay, great. So, this is me. Now, I'm not saying do this or whatever. I'm in the Deep South. You got to remember, we're all very conservative, have a similar upbringing. Every morning when we get together, the whole team, whether it's 7 people like it was in the temporary office or 14 people or whatever, we get around our big table in the meeting room, and we have the whole team. We have a morning prayer together. Okay, I know it's controversial, but we do it. We have a morning prayer. Everybody, if they have something they want to put on the prayer list, whatever. And so then I say an opening prayer for the day, just like you would get at a ball game or in Congress. They still do that in Congress, but
yes, they do. They do. They have a Congress.
So we do that every day. So we do that every day, and then most of the team breaks away and goes to their station. We do, though, however, have team leaders in every department. So we have a clinical team leader. We have a clerical team leader, which represents all the front office activities, and we have a financial team leader, which she does insurance and collection stuff like that. And so they stay behind, and we have a sheet. You could call it a huddle sheet, or you could call it a daily meeting sheet, whatever. But it has key statistics that I like to know: the previous day's production, the previous day's collection, where we stand in the month, stuff like that, and post-operative treatment calls. I like to know how everybody's doing from the previous day, and we go through that sheet, and we start the morning prayer at 10 till.
10 till what?
10 till 8.
Okay.
Unless it's a 7 o'clock day. We do 7 on Wednesdays. 10 till 8, and we're usually through with that huddle sheet by 8 o'clock straight up. Then I'm able to, let's see, I've got this. I'll show you in my office. I have these, this board that I started using. You ever seen one of these? It's like a whiteboard. Now this is an old model, but it's a whiteboard, and it tells me pretty much where to go. So it's the priority. So I get through the meeting, I go and I look for number 1 on this board. And now this board in my office is broadcast throughout the office. I have video on it, and it broadcasts to about 7 or 8 monitors. And so wherever that board tells me to go, I just go. And after the meeting, I'm no longer management, Dr. Griffin, the CEO guy. I am worker number 1, primary provider, Dr. Griffin, for the next 8 hours. And then at the end of the day, I might could go back to doing some managerial responsibilities. But I feel very strongly that during the 8-hour workday, you're seeing patients, it's really impossible for you to effectively make good management decisions. I think you just need to be the doctor and focus on your patients and do your management stuff before and after, and also on days off. So
okay, so do you have an office manager? Is she one of these clinical, clerical, financial team leaders?
Listen, everybody, I'm not besmirching office managers. I don't like the term just because I have in some offices I see a person is declared the office manager. It's almost always a front office person. And so if it's always a front office person, they don't always see the perspective of the clinical staff. So we have team leaders for the departments, and we do not have one office manager per se. It can work that way. We do.
So your office isn't. I think the Catholic Church is the easiest example. So you have a pope, cardinals, bishops, priest. So the office manager would be the dentist would be the pope, and so you don't have an office manager who's ahead of the clinical director or the clerical director of finance. So you basically you go from Chris being the pope to then 3 archbishop cardinals of clinical, clerical, financial.
Right.
And then each one of those, you said you have 14 employees?
We're building back up. We had 14 before the fire. We're down to 7, and now we're adding slowly. I don't even know.
So those 3 people each probably have. So clinical team leader probably has 5 people under them. So each one of those probably has 5 employees or something like
that. Right. Now the interesting part, almost every dentist we present this concept to, they always want to make a hygienist the clinical team leader. Now, do you think that's I mean, I don't know, but it's my experience that making a hygienist the clinical team leader for everybody in the clinical department is usually a bad idea.
Why do you say that?
Well, because the hygienist, when we do personality testing, they almost always grade out to a person who likes a lot of stability, doesn't like change, and they're great at what they do, but it's just they have a tough psychological mindset to manage people.
And that's why they don't do well on production. I firmly believe in all offices, you put them on production and then they have a bad day and they're extremely stressed. They have their bills to pay and their car payment, their house payment, their rent and mortgage equipment. And on a good day, that doesn't override the bad day. And I also think the hygienists have a low variance where if I have my morning cancel or I have a bad morning, no shows or whatever, I can get an emergency afternoon that needs a root canal, build up and crown, do 3,000 in an emergency room to make up for anything happen. So I agree. Hygienists on average prefer stability over incentives and risk and all that, and we pay ours hourly. So who is usually your clinical team leader? A dental assistant?
It is my head clinical assistant is my clinical team leader, and by the way, I can't say enough about her. She's amazing. She was born in Mexico City. She immigrated to California early in life, and somehow through pure luck or however, she ended up in Mississippi. And I found her, and she is, I frequently think that she's probably smartest person in the building, including me. So, but I'm tickled to death we got her. She probably could be an office manager because I think she's level-headed enough, but I think she's fine just where she is.
Yeah, same here. The first bookkeeper I ever hired was like I think it was $12 an hour. And now she's the president of my company. And I mean, I could never be as smart as Lori. I mean, she just dwarfs me in all management. So so explain to everyone listening, what's the difference between clerical and financial? Financial is that treatment plan coordinator?
Yes, man, Howard, it's a gray area. I mean, so you got to draw somewhere. So in my office, my clerical team leader is her number is production, if that makes sense, and everything that goes with it: scheduling, financial arrangements, case acceptance, case presentation. My financial coordinator is really, you could call her a collections manager if you wanted to use a different term, but she's in charge of the collection number. So she's in charge of the insurance, getting the checks in, and running people down that owe on their bill. But really, we've got a good system where we rarely have to run anybody down for money, but that's really her job. Okay,
so you said clerical was scheduling.
Yes.
Okay, now you've lectured for the Scheduling Institute.
I actually, Jay Geyer and I developed a course together called Assistant U back years ago. I don't even remember how long. And I did for over a year lecture, and I taught the class. After we developed it, I wrote the material and I lectured it for about a year and a half. But then I haven't been with them for several years now.
Could you ever put that? Now you have a course on Dental Town. Talk about that course.
Oh, high velocity dentistry.
Yeah.
I mean, I really high velocity dentistry. Basically.
How long ago did you put that course up there?
Oh, that was before the fire. So that came out in January of last year, I guess, January 2013. And, I was really proud. I mean, I was told, your guys put it in your magazine for a while. It was the highest ranked.
It was amazing.
I appreciate that. It was really just a course where I took that process where you go from not having any patients to walking through the whole process, them out the door that I just described. We just basically did that in a 1 hour video.
Yeah, and I hope, can we ever get some more of those from you? I mean, I think you're amazing.
I've got more time since the new office. Let me tell you, I would not wish on anyone to have to rebuild an office from scratch. And I'm such a hands-on, got to have it my way guy, Howard. I found the building I wanted. I drew it out myself. I had enough engineering background. I drew the original plan myself. Then I just had an architect run it through. And then I was on site every day. I actually did some of the carpentry. And I've been involved in every aspect, and it was very taxing. But now it's over, and so maybe I can get you another.
Now you're in Ripley, Mississippi,
yes.
And how big is that town?
It is Well, it was 6,500 people 5 years ago, and now it's 5,500 people.
Yeah, and you know what? I have to tell all my all of our podcast viewers, I have a huge bias. I'm from Kansas, and in my little city, friends of mine, Dan Carney and his wife Beverly started Pizza Hut, got to 2,800 locations. Another guy in our church started Godfather's Pizza, the Shaw family. Sam Walton started in Bentonville, Arkansas. And what I'm a firm believer in is that the businesses that were started in towns of over 1 million, they could piss off so many customers, and they had so many customers left. And the real value in business models always comes from small rural areas, because when you're in a town of 5,500, you can't just have policies that make people really, really mad and want to strangle you. And in Phoenix, Arizona, I mean, I can't even go a week without an unsolicited comment from someone about what they want to do to the local Cox Cable monopoly on Cablevision and their customer service, and or the government or this and that. And I seriously believe that guys like us from small town areas understand that if you piss off Mrs. Jones and she's going to badmouth you for 40 years in a town of 5,000 the rest of your life, and it was over something that you know, my dad, I mean, we didn't even have contracts back then. Their partners were on handshakes. There was not even a legal document. So and I also believe that 2/3 of the dentists in America graduate and go to the 117 towns over 100,000. And then only 1/3 goes to where the other half of America lives, in 19,022 towns. And every time I find a kid that's just crushing it, he's always in a town of 5,000. But no one wants to live there. So how far are you from the big city?
Oh, Howard, you got to drive 45 minutes to Tupelo, Elvis's birthplace, to go to the movies. You got to drive an hour to Memphis to do anything really good. Which is, you know, I mean, that's just where we're in the middle of nowhere. You gotta have, I always say you pretty much gotta be from here to want to come back, but I am, so I love it.
But I take exception to that, because these dentists will not want to go to your town, but they'll go sign up for the Navy and go sit in the middle of the ocean in an aircraft carrier. You say you're 45 minutes from the movie. They're 5,000 miles from a docking base. And they'll go sit out there for 4 years. And I'm like, what is wrong with rural America? And we're also seeing big trends where these, we always think of the Fortune 500. I always think of the Russell 2000. And a lot of these companies are realizing that the rates they're paying for employees and parking in San Francisco, and now they're driving an hour into these small towns all over California, where they go to the First Street in Maine and can buy a boarded up building for nothing, and all the employees there have half the stress, half the cost, half the everything. And so give them a pitch about why these 5,000 graduates should look at rural America and not Manhattan.
Well, first off, let me just say that I'm more than happy for you young guys not to come to Ripley, because I actually have 11,000 patient charts in a town of 5,500. So I'm tickled to death that I'm more than happy to figure out the capacity constraints for right here. But everywhere else, including my sons, if they ever were to go into dentistry, I mean, why would you? I mean, look, it's just harder. I coach dentists around the country. If I talk to a guy from LA or New York or Chicago, I mean, they're dying, man. They're dying. But the guys in Southeast Indiana or Northeast Tennessee or Arkansas are killing it, because you can come in. Now, listen, I'll also say this, Howard. Now, maybe not everybody's got this gregarious personality that you've got. I don't know. But if you're kind of a rear end to people, maybe a small town's not for you, because, like I say, every decision you make has to be run through the filter of, this person right here is kin to 25 people in my practice and 2 of my employees, right? And my wife, how mad is my wife going to get because her aunt's a kindergarten teacher with my kid at school, okay? So you have to be really, really a people pleaser in a small town. But I was very shy and everything. And, after a couple, 3 years, you get over it. I mean,
but that's the deal. When you go into a dental office and, these dentists will get 25 new patients a month, and if a hygienist works 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year, she works 2,000 hours a year, so she can only see 1,000 people twice a year. And then you look at the model of, say, 25 new patients a month. So what's 1,000 divided by 25? How many months would that be? Off the top of your head?
1,000 divided by 25, it'd be 40. Yeah,
so every 40 months, they should have another hygienist. And 40 months is just what, 3 years? And then you come back to that practice, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 years, and they don't even have a 40-hour-a-week hygienist. They have a 3-day-a-week hygienist, because every time someone comes in the front door, someone's going out the back door. And I'm here in Arizona where they put this huge dam on a very little river, and the Colorado River, I mean, through the desert, there's not much water there, but that water's backed up for miles because they shut the door. And practices like you, where you have to think this stuff out, like, oh my God, that teacher, she's a kindergarten teacher and blah, blah. When you put on that small town atmosphere hat and you worry more about closing the back door instead of blowout marketing, trying to get people in the front door, you build the $1 million practice. It's not about new patients. It's about retention. And the reason we've been crushing it all the way through the recession is because I opened in 1987. And now, at least every single day, I have a patient that I remember their mom carrying him in the office in a bassinet 25 years ago. And now that little girl's carrying a little girl in a bassinet. And it's just crazy. The other day, this girl brought in, and I'm looking at this baby and said, God, that looks just like you when your mama carried you in 1987. And now you're carrying in a baby. And so that's how we grow. It's all word of mouth. It's all patient retention. It starts with employee retention. So what are your thoughts on employee retention? How important is that in a small town?
On employee retention? Yeah, I mean, okay, so it is very important. Now, I'll tell you that I've had to let go 3 people in 16 years of working, and it's painful because each time, I mean, one person I went to church with, Howard, I went to church with her brother's chief of police, and I had to let her go, so it was painful, and I didn't want to. I mean, situation dictated it. But you have to be careful in your hiring because you cannot haphazardly fire people in a small town. I mean, you have to. But here's the good news. So I was thinking also back to the efficiency.
I want to draw one thing on that deal that you said that was very profound. The reason you have to fire so many people is because you haphazardly hire people. But then these dentists, they have these favorite sports teams, and your favorite sports team spends more time picking over a new player on a new draft. I mean, look at the NFL when they're doing a draft pick. I mean, how serious is that new hire decision? And then a dentist, when he needs an assistant, she'll run an ad in the newspaper on Craigslist, get 2 applications, and hire one of the 2. Could you imagine if an NFL football team did that? We need a quarterback. 2 showed up. We hired the second guy.
That's right.
I mean, they might spend a year on that decision.
Well, that's what we're doing. Right now we're hiring currently, but we have a serious process where I don't even see the people until they've been vetted a couple of times by my team leaders. Then I come in, then I say which ones I would like to give a personality profile and job skills test to, right? So then we do all that. And there's been a couple that I just wanted to hire real bad, and then their job skills and personality test comes back and it's just not a good fit. So we pass, because I've learned, the wrong way that if you hire someone just because you like them, chances are it's going to blow up in your face.
And you just said something very profound. Are you the only man in your office? Does everyone know? Yeah. And I want to tell something to Dennis. I just saw some interesting research again. I've seen this research every 5 to 10 years my whole life. They start off with Desmond Morris, who first noticed that female monkeys and apes talk 5 times for every time one time the man talks. That the female monkeys and apes will interact, play with, talk, touch, whatever, 5 other monkeys and apes every time the man does. And they just come out, the University of Chicago economists just came out with the deal that said average man in America is at 2,300 words spoken a day, average American female 7,500 words a day. And I seriously believe, maybe this sounds sexist, but in a deep level, I firmly believe that what you just said was profound, that you have your staff vet them out. if females are going to work with females, let the females find out if they gel, if they have chemistry, if they play well in the sandbox, if they treat other people like they want to be treated, if they, if they problem solve together. And too many times a man will interview a woman and she'll have nice personality and big and bubbly, say, oh, I love this lady. And then he'll hire that poor lady and throw her into a sandbox with 5 other women who might decide in 5 minutes they don't like her now and they're never going to like her. And so vetting them out in a female workplace, exactly right. I want to be the last person that signs off on a deal.
Well, what difference does it make if I like them, if they have to be an effective team member with all the other ladies in the office? So really. So, and then
I want you to touch on something else. So many dentists are controlling. They just don't like to delegate. I mean, a lot of them won't even let their assistant pack a cord or make a temporary or like CEREC machine. I mean, look at the craziness of a CEREC machine. Before CEREC, the dentist would take a polyvinyl polyether impression, send it to a lab where he couldn't pick the lab tech out of a police lineup, and they'd make the entire crown and then bring it back in, he'd cement it. And now you have the CEREC, and you say, okay, you're the doctor, you numbed, you prepped, it's ready. So can your assistant optically scan it? No, I should do that, only me. Can she design it? No, only me. Can she mill it? No, only me. And then he's in there in the lab, in the operatory for an hour and a half. It's like, so why can guys like you and me delegate so much to our management team and our staff? And why do you think other dentists, their number one enemy is the man in the mirror, and they won't delegate to other people?
That's a good question. You brought up the CEREC. Now, I'm a late CEREC bloomer, so I just got mine, a couple years ago after years of cajoling from Sam Puri. He was a professor of mine at UT. And since then, I saw his great success with it, but I still just thought, I'm in a small town, I'm just going to keep doing PFMs. But then I finally saw the light, and I love that thing, by the way. It's a wonderful toy. I love it. But here's how my CEREC goes. Howard, prep. Take a video of the part of the tooth that I prepped, and then try in the little porcelain crown. If it fits, hand it back to my assistant, put the permanent in. Everything else, I really have forgotten how it works. I don't even remember. I mean, what difference does it make? So look, if you've got, I'm sure, would Henry Ford or Deming, would they say the same thing? Let's take a look of everything that has to happen during a given workday, and let's say, or a procedure, let's look at it. Now, what has to be done by you as the dentist? All right, let's pull that aside and let's try to make that as efficient as possible, but we're okay if we just kind of leave that alone. Now, every single thing that doesn't have to be done by the dentist, how about we get a person in there who's not making $250 an hour like the dentist or whatever, that you can pay to do a really good job, and probably a nicer person than you are anyway. The women, if it's a woman, they like to talk. I'll back you up on that. I recently got my AT&T.com online thing, and I checked it, and last month I sent 70 texts, which is a lot, I think, and my wife sent 1,700. So hey, I believe you.
They're hardwired to talk.
So let them do what they can do best and do all the stuff that you don't have to do, and then your expensive per hour thing, you can be doing very productive things. Like this picture, I have got normally 5 things going on at one time. Well, that's because I'm required to do my thing on each of those 5 things, and I let everyone else in the office facilitate the entire experience of the procedure. So I guess maybe one time, and I think me too, everybody, but let's say you did something and your assistant did a bad temporary, the temporary came off, the patient came in, they got ticked off at you, maybe they went to another dentist, maybe it was a big ordeal, maybe it was terrible, and you think it was probably because you delegated the temporary to the assistant. Okay, well, how many hundreds or thousands of temporaries have been okay, and you're going to let that one bad experience sort of cloud every single procedure for the rest of your career till you're 70? I mean, come on.
And that's called emotional anchoring. I've noticed that every time a dentist complains about insurance, he always says Delta. And then when you're in the office, you say, well, show me the form. And it's never Delta. It's like Connecticut General. They just associate that insurance is Delta. So whenever an insurance company doesn't pay, it was Delta. It's emotionally anchoring. And I want to say one thing about, if Deming's What was it? His 14 management principles, or 12, or
He had 14.
yeah, 14. Okay, I got it right. I want to say one thing about the CEREC, though, that I was impressed with. I wouldn't say I was a labeler. Samir Puri's a friend of mine. He lives up the street from me. He was in my office last week, giving my assistants pointers, and I'm really feel sorry for Samir. We were doing Ironman together, and he hit a pothole and fell off and busted his clavicle in half and a bunch of ribs. But he's healing up good. But the thing that I like about Deming is quality control, and so I had CEREC 1 in 87. It was horrible. And then finally a decade later, I said, okay, I'll get CEREC 2. That was horrible. And so now I'm a newcomer to CEREC 3 Omnicam and love it. But so I'm a newcomer with CEREC, but I was doing CEREC 1 when Samir was in grammar school, But the thing I like about CEREC the most is the patient likes same day crowns. No doubt about it. They like tooth color, no doubt about it. What I like about it is I practiced about a year before I learned to wear loops, and with 3.5 loops, I see everything so much better. But what I love about the CEREC is when you're done with that prep to scan it, and now you're seeing it on a screen, on a computer monitor. And when you start seeing your preps, that's about, you're an engineer, what is that, 30 to 40 times larger? When you see it on a screen like that, wouldn't you say that's 30 or 40x? I mean, I don't know. Yeah, and it's made me be completely OCD on. I don't even want to look at that prep till I've smooth the burr with smooth diamonds, the cylinder end cutting smoother. Hit it with a soft flex desk, round everything, polish everything. I mean, so now I spend about as much time polishing up and cleaning up the prep is I did initially prepping the prep, which back in the old days of the PFM, no matter what you sent to the lab, they just had die spacer. And CAD-CAM doesn't use die spacer. I mean, that is one tight fit. And so it really has increased my quality. I think more about my preps now. When I used to see dentists going to that lavishness on PFMs, I thought they were just kind of overkill or kind of too much art, not enough science or reality and everything. And now with CEREC, I'm just a true believer.
Well, it's weird though. I have to say now, not that this is a serious discussion, but it's weird to me how good those things fit. I mean, I guess it's all the steps in the PFM. You got the stone and everything else, but I mean, I think CEREC fits better than anything I've ever even attempted in dentistry.
And I was talking on to my good buddy Mike Detola, another Ironman dentist, and what he was saying was that with when humans pour up the model at Glidewell is the biggest lab in the world. I mean, they make 5% of all the crowns in America. 1 out of every 20 crowns made by Glidewell. That when humans pour it up in a model and trim the die and do the whole thing by hand, they run about a 6 out of 100 remake. But when you email in the optical scan from your CAD, from your oral scanner, no matter what brand it is, and then a machine builds the die, and then CAD-CAM and sends it back, it's only 1 out of 100 remake. So you're basically going, so that's basically, 5 out of 100 remakes gone. So
it's amazing. It's amazing technology.
Yeah. So the smallest thing your eye can see is 50 microns, and that computer can see a micron. So, hey, I'm down to 12 minutes. So give us some more low-hanging fruit. What would you tell the dentist? He's in a town of 5,000 just like you. His town's going nowhere. They had one big factory. It closed years ago. Your city contracted by 1,000. So what do you tell a dentist who's I just talked to a guy the other day. And he said, same thing as you. Your town was 6,000 to 5,000. He's in Ohio. His town was 6,000. They closed down one factory, and 24 months later, his town's down 1,000. And he's like, should I move? Should I stay? Should I stay or should I go? I mean, wasn't there a song written by that by the Clash? So rock the Casbah and tell these dentists, what do you do in a small town when it's contracting?
I can tell you what I did, Howard, and whether or not it's smart or not, you do what you feel good about. But around 2005, the economy was still good, right? 2005, it was rocking and rolling. I was having personal problems here because of me trying to do, let's just say, an LVI type practice in Ripley, Mississippi. I mean, yeah, I'm good at doing veneers, but it just, nobody wanted it. And I tried to shove it down their throat, and I just wasn't going anywhere. So about 2005, I decided, well, let's just step back for a minute. Let's be realistic. What do you have in your town? You have some big factories, one of which had 500 people that did close, Howard, in my town. But we have some big factories going, and people, school teachers, stuff like that, families. And I said, what would they need? What would they like? And most of them would like regular cleanings, maybe, and conservative dentistry, extractions, crowns, fillings, things like that. And so at the time that I was trying to do the advanced service practice, I was terrible at extractions. So it seemed weird because I'm in like Mississippi where you could pull, you could make a living off just pulling teeth, right? So I was terrible at it. So I said, okay, how can I get better at this one skill, which I'm terrible at, which obviously people would like? I can quit sending this to maybe with the oral surgeon. Of course, I quit getting hams at Christmas, but I went on a dental mission trip to Mexico, and I spent a week in a hut, about a 100-degree concrete hut, and with people waiting out under a lemon tree, just lined up for miles. I forget how many hundreds of people we saw. And at the end of the week, I weighed 20 pounds less, and I was a heck of a lot better at pulling teeth. And so I got my skills better at that. I tried to figure out how to trim the fat on everything else so we could do, instead of doing a single $1,500 crown, back in 2005, my objective was, well, reckon we could do 3 $500 crowns in the same amount of time if we really thought about it. So I got my skills up in that area. Then, and by the way, Howard, while I was trying to go through this transition and get my skills up, we hung out for a little while down in Houston, Texas. I presented the first lecture I ever did at Scott Perkins' lecture in Houston, Texas. Now, can I tell off on you for a minute something that is somewhat, it's not off color, but anyway, I'm gonna do it anyway.
I love to be teased and poke fun of. Jerome Smith was with us at that course.
Jerome, I love Jerome.
That was a great course. There were so many townies.
Marshall Smith. I'm totally name dropping, but I'm a young guy.
It was all townies. It was awesome. We all knew each other.
I'm like 12 years younger than I am now. I probably looked like I was 18 at the time. And Scott wanted me. Scott and I had done a demonstration of dissolution times. I actually did the experiment. Dissolution time of turkey in different concentrations of sodium hypochlorite. Right? Totally boring. So Howard Farran's in the audience because I'm like, holy cow! I just listened to the 30-day MBA. This guy's like my hero, and he's on the front row. And I'm like, I'm so nervous. And so I get up there. 5 minutes into it, I look over and Howard's doing this right here. Totally out. 15 minutes into it, Howard, you started snoring. You're like doing that right there. And so I'm heartbroken. I'm like, oh, so terrible. I'm just, my lecture is so boring. I put my hero to sleep. And so then I get through my hour. I somehow fight through it. Other people manage to stay awake. I'm done. I'm pretty much without any fanfare leaving the little stage area. Howard, you woke up, snapped to attention, stood up, gave me a standing ovation, and did this right here and got everybody in the crowd to stand up and give me a standing ovation. And probably, if you hadn't done that and given me that kind of, feeling of, okay, this is pretty cool, I might have given up lecturing and probably would not have gone on and done as much as I have. So thank you for doing that.
And I don't even know what happened the night before. I was probably out in the bars with those guys till the wee hours of the night.
You and I, we went to the party. Everybody went to this party. You and I left early, caught a cab back to the hotel, and we were probably in bed. We were in bed by 9 or 10 o'clock. Everybody else is no telling when they went to bed. So we were good that night. We were not bad guys.
Did you have you heard from Scott Perkins lately?
Every couple of years I hear he'll send me an email or something. I had a client who hired me, who had hired him a year ago to come in and help them with some stuff, some clinical training. But I don't communicate with him. I wish I did. I really like Scott and I miss him. And
so do I. If you got a contact information, fix this up. I'd love to see him again.
Okay.
That was a great time. So now we're down to 6 minutes, and so give them another steak and potatoes that they can do for their practice.
Okay, so I'm going back to my story. So I'm in 2005, and I'm saying, what can I do, right? So at the time, I was the devil on this because I had gone around. I actually picked out 7 or 8 dentists, and I traveled all over the country, and I just spent the day with them. And I picked their brains. Vince Monticello, Gary Cameron, Roy Smith, Wayne Mortensen in Louisville, Bob Westerman in Baton Rouge. I mean, I forget how many people, but I went around to a lot of places. And I brought home this cache of ideas. And so one thing that I realized was I can't really do a high volume style practice or high capacity practice unless I've got patients to do it on. I've got to test this model. Does it work? I don't know. And so some of them at that time with great success had done a free exam, free x-ray type offering. And you know how it is, especially in the South, everybody, oh, it's so bad. I mean, it's I felt terrible, but I ran it anyway. By the way, the state board, ended up calling me several times, and they never found any wrongdoing, but, somebody turned me in. So, hey, get over that, guys. If you're going to ever succeed, you got to get over being scared of the other dentist turning you into the board if you didn't do anything wrong. So, anyway, I ran the ad, and for about a year, Howard, we did 150 new patients a month. I don't want to do that many now. That was all marketing patients. Now we just do pretty much all direct referrals. But we just got all these patients in here, and I was able to practice my model, and we just treated them right. We just made sure for that 2-year period I was on point, man. I made sure everything was just tip-top shape. We collected them. We got our hygiene bursting at the seams, and I quit being such a heavy-handed presenter. I gave people options. Now it's a very everyday thing for me to say to someone that comes in with a toothache. First thing I do is I say, "Hey, you just tell me the truth. Would you like to fix this, or would you like to pull this?" If they say they want to pull it, I try to just a little bit talk them out of it. But I'm just very soft-handed with my presentations, and most of the time people want to fix their tooth. Then the next step is, they always want to know if how can I afford it. So then the next step is always, well, let's see if we can figure out a way that we can get this done, And so then it's time for my clerical team leader to come in and present financials. But I got a big old base, right? And then I treated them right, closed the back door, and now, man, I could get away with 30, 40 new patients a month, and we're still killing it because I've got this huge patient base. If I need to run a special, I don't run it to the general public. Man, I segment out my internal house list of people, and we send specials to them. I don't do external marketing hardly at all anymore. So
okay, Chris, I've only got you for 3 more minutes. So it's a young kid, 5 years out of school. What skill sets do they learn? You've mentioned you did ortho. Do you place implants? Do you do CAD/CAM? Tell us the clinical dentistry things.
If you're in a small town, you're either going to do one of 2 things. If you want to have a big old office, you probably need to do a lot. But you can't learn it all at once. I did ortho first, learned ortho.
From who?
I did Bob Garrity for 400 hours. But then since then, I've done, 20 hours here, 20 hours there. I could, of course, do any kind of braces, extractions. I got good at that on my own by doing the mission work. Implants. I learned implants from a guy named Brady Frank. He actually came to Ripley because I wouldn't go to Oregon. He came to Ripley because he was so determined to teach me. And so now we do implants. Howard, I don't know of anything I don't do, honestly. I hate doing hard pedo. How about that? I refer out hard pedo. Now, I probably could make a lot of money if I did more hard pedo, but I just personally hate it. So that's the one thing I refer out. Everything else we do.
And that's a very common man thing. When even though I had 4 boys in 60 months and they're the pride of my life, Eric, Greg, Ryan, and Zach, when a 3-year-old kid starts crying, my resting heart pulse is 140, and I'd rather live under a bridge in a box than deal with a 3-year-old. But one thing I think is gonna hurt that profession, pediatric dentistry, is when I was a freshman dental school, the senior class had 1 woman. And last year's graduating class was 45% women. And I've been in those schools. I have never met a woman in dental school once that told me, oh, no, I'm going to refer all the kids. So I think the women and the maternal instincts is going to put massive downward pressures on pediatric dentistry, because I think 20 years from now, half these dentists are going to be women and they won't have a problem with a 3-year-old. But most men are kind of hardwired. I'd rather take impacted upside down wisdom teeth than a 3-year-old kid crying and wanting to suck his thumb. I'm just like, wow. So let's see. I And I want to say one thing about the missionary. I want to close now on that missionary dentistry thing you said. A lot of dentists listen to this podcast. They think they got big problems. They think they're stressed out. You learned how to pull teeth on missionary dentistry. We have a common friend, Jerome Smith. He's the one who turned me on to missionary dentistry 25 years ago in Chiapas, Mexico. We've gone to Adiac, Mexico. Last month I did an orphanage in Tanzania, Africa. And gosh darn, in Mexico, as we were sitting there, having a beer, 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, getting ready to go to bed, the line standing up for the next morning was already 100 people. And I remember sitting there in the rain. Sitting there in the porch, in the rain, this massive rain pour. And those moms had walked for miles holding their babies, and they stood there all night in the rain for just the chance at seeing some, American missionary dentist. And so, Dennis, if you think that your world is falling apart, you need a reality check. You need to get the hell out of the United States of America and go hit the rest of the world and count your blessings. And it's a great place to learn extractions. Aaron Garg is doing it in Dominican Republic with implant courses. They're springing up in Brazil, where dentists are afraid to do a sinus lift or place an implant or whatever, and they go out there in the deep Dominican Republic, Brazil, Mexico, where a dentist like an average dentist can sink 40, 50 implants in a week, and they come back and it's like, oh yeah, that's no big deal. But hey, Chris, you're amazing. Can they still get a hold of you on your what's your contact? You still going with the capacityacademy.com?
Yes, yes. My website is thecapacityacademy.com. I wish it were shorter, but that's what it is. And just Chris Griffin at thecapacityacademy.com. If you need me, I'll sure enough try to help you.
And Chris, thanks for keeping it real. Thank you for all you do, not only for dentistry, but for Dental Town, your practice city. I just think you're the real deal. I love you, man. Thank you for sharing an hour with everyone.
I can't say, Howard, thank you also. And man, like I said, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be doing this today. So everything, I appreciate you a ton.
You're too kind. Have a rocking hot day.
All right. Well, you too, Howard. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.